Hiring the Right Way with Jay Niblick, episode 162. Are you ready to make your law firm a profit-generating machine that will free up your time and skyrocket your impact? With more than 2 decades of business growth experience and having proven that you can be successful while prioritizing your family and your impact, introducing the Profit with Law podcast. I am your host, the creator of the Firm Differentiator 10X Effect, Moshe Amsel. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the Profit with Law podcast. For those of you who are tuning in on the day this gets released or the day after, a very Merry Christmas to you. I'm Jewish. I celebrate Hanukkah. So for my Jewish listeners, a belated Happy Hanukkah to you. And I hope that you get to enjoy time with the family. This is a very odd year, and it's really strange. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year, to be needing to separate from our loved ones and not being able to hang out together. So I wanted to, on this year in particular, I wanted to wish everybody well, and I hope that this holiday season is everything that you need it to be, and you're able to spend quality time with at least your household, if not for family members. Now, we're going to have a guest interview today that I'm excited for, and I'm going to bring that in just a moment, but I'm tacking on this extra intro because I wanted to, as you know, if you've been listening to this podcast, we're gearing up for our Law Firm Growth Summit in February. It's going to be February 9th to 11th. And I've highlighted a bunch of things that we're doing there, but what I wanted to do today is I wanted to tell you about the first 12 speakers that we've announced. So over the course of the next few weeks, we're going to be announcing all of the speakers for the event. And there's going to be, I don't have the count in front of me, but it's something like 40 different speakers, and very excited to have all these people involved. This is going to be a massive event, a massive undertaking, and I am, we're running out of time, so we're getting nervous about it, but I'm also very excited about it. Can't wait to greet you there. If you haven't got your tickets yet, what are you waiting for? Go to lawfirmgrowthsummit.com. So I'm just going to read it right off the sales page, so there's no specific order to these names, but Seth Price, who's been a guest on this podcast, he's also the owner of Blue Shark Digital, as well as a very successful law firm that he is a partner of in the D.C. area. Melissa Shanahan, and she's going to be a guest on the show, so we're going to have her on here soon. Sam Malai, one of our top downloaded episodes here is Sam Malai's interview where he talks about how he got over 1,000 5-star Google reviews. Molly McGrath, host of the Hiring and Empowering podcast, also a previous guest on this show, wonderful person whose expertise is in around making the right hires and properly inundating your properly onboarding your new hire. Bill Hauser from SMB team, definitely a Google PPC marketing guru, but also he's been on a personal development, personal improvement process that he's been doing very publicly, and I'm excited to have him come and share some of that with us. Wendy Witt is also somebody, I'm trying to remember if her interview was already released. I think it was. I think we had her already on the podcast in the past. If not, she will be on here soon. Andrew Stickle, otherwise known as Andy Stickle. If you don't know him, you haven't been on Facebook. Because his Facebook ads are very well known by attorneys. Whether you've opted in for his stuff or not, he's definitely targeted you and you've seen his stuff. Andy is a wonderful individual. He's a wonderful marketer. I'm super excited to have him involved again. He's been a speaker at a number of our events over the course of the last year, including last year's 2019 Law Firm Growth Summit. As a matter of fact, Seth Price, Sam Malai, and Molly McGrath are also repeat speakers. John Strohmeyer, also an attorney, owner of a firm And he has a background in the hospitality industry. He's spent a lot of time talking about how to take care of your clients, handle them in a customer service-esque way, like the hospitality industry does as their primary focus. Very good content, and I know he's coming out with a book. He's starting his own podcast, so I'm excited to have him with us again. Allison Williams, otherwise known as the Law Firm Mentor, also has her own podcast, I think also by the same name, Law Firm Mentor. And Allison was a speaker at our first event in 2019, the 2019 Law Firm Growth Summit. Very, very talented lady and owner of a law firm in the New Jersey area in the family law practice area. And she also does, with the Law Firm Mentor brand, she does coaching and guidance and workshops for law firm owners. Neil Tyra, known as the host of the Law Entrepreneur podcast, also runs his own solo practice and has a podcast geared towards solo attorneys. Conrad Sam, also a marketer, hasn't been on any of our stuff in the past, but we did an interview together fairly recently. I don't know if it's been produced yet or not. I don't remember, but brilliant mind when it comes to the legal industry and marketing. Eric Farber is also a author of a book. He wrote, I think it's called Firm of Culture. I might be screwing that up, but we did a podcast episode together talking all about the culture in your law firm and how important that is. He's also the owner or managing partner of a large law firm, I think 40, 50 people he had on his staff when I interviewed him. I'm sure it's grown since then. So that's it. That's the first 12 speakers that we announced. So you might recognize some of these names. It's really exciting. These are all very smart individuals who are bringing great stuff to the event. We're going to be releasing the official agenda over the course of the next few weeks as well. And you'll be able to see that. But don't wait for us to make these announcements and to release these. Just take my word for it that this is going to be an amazing event, one that you're not going to want to miss. And get your tickets now because the prices go up every single week. And the longer that you wait, the more you're going to pay to attend. Hope to see you there, lawfirmgrowthsummit.com. And now, once again, happy holidays. Here is our guest interview replay for you. Today we're with Jay Niblick from WizeHire. Jay is the co-founder and chief strategic officer at WizeHire.com, a SaaS recruiting and selection software company helping small to medium-sized businesses hire like the pros. We work with those professional corporations that understand the importance of hiring only the best talent, but lack the internal bench strength or expertise to manage the sometimes overwhelming and complex process. Clearly, I was reading that off a script, or we would have corrected the we work because I'm not part of WizeHire. But I'd like to know more about WizeHire, and that's why I've got Jay here on the show. Not so much to pitch his product and tell you about WizeHire, but I'd love to have conversation around the hiring and recruiting process and why a product specifically that they have launched is going to be the key for you. You know, we all know that there's the big ones that are out there. You know, the Dice, the ZipRecruiter, and you know how does you know what WizeHire is doing separate from that? And I can't wait to dive into that conversation. But for now, we're going to first invite Jay to say hello to us and welcome to the show, Jay.
Thanks for having me. I'm grateful.
It's my absolute pleasure. And I appreciate you being giving with your time to come here on the show and share with our listeners for the course of the next 30, 45, 60, 90 minutes, however long it goes. No, we won't go for 90 minutes, but
3 hours.
Yes, exactly. You know, I'm an avid podcast listener. I've been listening to podcasts for a very long time. And I also liked Tim Ferriss's stuff, his books and stuff like that. And I said, you know what? He has a podcast. Let me go check it out. And his podcasts are 2 hours long. Mm-hmm. I listened to a couple of them and I could not do it. I could not commit to 2 hours. So I try to keep it shorter. There's people who have all kinds of opinions about the lengths of podcasts and all that, but let's actually create some real content for people to enjoy. So Jay, before we get into any of the details tell me a little bit about your background. How did you get to WizeHire? What was your path to get there? People want to know you as a person. So give us some of that backstory.
Well, I was born in a small cabin. No, I mean, not going too far back. I started a company. I was in the military. I got out. I went to work for Johnson & Johnson. I was in sales, orthopedic, surgical, sports med stuff. I always wanted to run my own company. My dad had taken that step out of corporations, and it just appealed to me. And so I started a company in '99 that specialized in psychometric instruments. My background's in organizational behavior, and so I authored a personality assessment, and that's still in business and doing great. But in doing so, another gentleman who worked there for us, we realized that the assessments that we'd written, numerous assessments by then, were really powerful, and they helped in so many ways with regards to human capital, all right, in pretty much any realm of human capital. But where they were going through a fleet of consultants around the world left a big gap between the larger corporations and the small corporations. And so we sat there one day, sitting around, and it was a balcony of a restaurant in New Orleans, and said, there's just millions and millions and millions of businesses out there. I mean, 29 million businesses in the United States alone are small to medium-sized business. And they're not really leveraged to take advantage of this. They need something more automated, more scalable, more simple. And so WizeHire was started 6.5 years ago now to address those needs. And the one vein that we decided to address it in was hiring. And they don't have the clients that work with us. The thousands of our customers are small to medium-sized business. It's no less important for them to make a good hire than it is for a big business to make a hire. But they don't have the bench strength. They don't have the benefit of having a masters of human capital HR person or a chief people officer, but it shouldn't be punitive to them that they don't. So that's why WizeHire came about, and we wanted to address that need. And I was the founding CEO for the first 5 years, and then earlier this year I stepped over to the chief strategic role because the company got big enough where one of the co-founders, Sid, is some more adept at the operational and daily stuff, and also equally strategic, and he's smarter than I am. So I focus now mostly on new markets and back into the creative laboratory and skunk work stuff. And so that's more fun for me. And we're just having a blast trying to help those small businesses with the resources they need to hire like the pros. I mean, it's more than just a phrase.
Sounds like a perfect adaptation of Traction and the EOS system by Gino Wickman. Are you familiar with that?
A little bit.
So Gino, and Traction's right over my shoulder here on the book, on this bookshelf, okay? Because I'm a big fan of the way that they have you design and run your business operation. But essentially, the idea is that there are two roles at the top of the company. There is the visionary and there is the integrator. And there's a lot of examples of this, but if you look at Walt and what was his brother's name? I keep screwing this up. I just had this the other night. Walt Disney's brother. He shall remain nameless for this conversation because I can't remember his name. But
probably what he was referred to most of his life. Like, when you have kids, you're so-and-so's father. You're not real.
So anyway, Walt Disney was the visionary. He had this grand idea of what they were going to create and in this fantasy land and theme park, but he wasn't the person to do the job. He wasn't the person who's going to see it through to the end. His brother was very hands-on and systemized, and was able to really his brother was in charge of getting the funds, getting the investor capital, and he was very good at getting involved in the details and being able to show that and pitch it to the investors. And interestingly, Walt is the one that people know and that the company got named after. But the reality is that this dynamic of you can't really be in both roles. And new business owners, you have no choice, right? When you start, it's just you. So you are in both roles, but you tend to find that you are stronger in one or the other. Now, maybe and often the entrepreneur, the person starting it, is the visionary. When you're lucky enough to have co-founder, right? So we had Seth Price here on the podcast, or maybe it wasn't on the podcast. Maybe it was in the Law Firm Growth Summit last year at the end of 2019 that he did a session. But I had a conversation with Seth Price, who is he is the co-founder of the co-founding partner of a law firm that has 50 plus employees in the Maryland, DC area. And the dynamic between him and his partner is a really good lawyer. And although Seth is a lawyer, his passion was in marketing and sales and business development. So when they started, it was like, okay, this is going to be what I'm going to do, and you're going to go and do the lawyer work. And that's the dynamic. And basically his, so everything legal related falls under the auspices of his co-founder, and everything related to growing and marketing and running the business falls under, and under Seth's domain. So having a co-founder gives you the ability to marry yourself to somebody who's strong where you're weak, and who's weak where you're strong. So you're blessed in that area. But I really like the idea that you're primarily in the visionary and he's the integrator, and there's no, both roles are extremely immensely important. But you probably feel so much freer right now. And he probably feels so much freer because you're each able to focus on what you love doing.
Yeah, and there was three of us that, so Nick's the third co-founder, and so we were extremely lucky there. And Sid is every bit as visionary. He's a very broad, talented person, but even then, so many people can only do so many things, right? So what you speak to is almost a foundational premise of why WizeHire exists. There's these old myths about strengths and weaknesses, and there's a lot of empirical work that's been done, or studies that show that top performers really in any industry and role and level. I mean, there's a 197,000 person study that was run over 7 years that came back to say that authenticity was one of the keys to success. It's one of the few things that has statistically significant correlation with success in all these different areas. And by authenticity, the definition would really be that what you just described. Understanding self-awareness was the first part, and authenticity was the second. Understanding what those natural talents are. And there's a misnomer out there that should be called a misnomer, the soft skills, that's binary, just gross little dissection of hard skills and soft skills. And I get why the terms grew out of probably more into the industrial era, even into Drucker's knowledge era today. It's still very commonly used, hard skills and soft skills, because hard skills are tangible. You can see them, you can touch them and grab them, and the soft skills are intangible. The downside of calling them soft skills, however, also implies that they're not as important in many people's minds. They're just soft. They don't matter. Hard is real and good and tangible. But the intangibles we know, and I just mentioned Drucker's knowledge worker, the evolutions from an agrarian to an industrial to an intellectual economy we're in right now and growing even more into, that's a transition that goes from the tangible skills being dominant in what people look for and what drives performance to those intangible. Let's erase soft and replace it with intangible skills. 80% of the US GDP is based on service. Those are soft skills. The stalwart kind of areas and verticals where we've seen, so from science, engineering, law, accounting, and finance, it's all been the CV. Right? Harvard Law School, you're in, come on, let's go. But people have realized in the last 10 years, 20 years, but in the last 10 years, you've seen a drastic shift in realizing, okay, the tangible hard skills are important, but they're no longer the boss. Nobody can work with John Doe. John Doe alienates his clients. I understand why he's not booking more hours, because nobody wants to refer him, because he may be technically the best person in this field of law, but there were studies done in medicine.
And no bedside manner, right?
No bedside manner. Yeah, no, literally empirically shown studies proving that the correlation between lawsuits and the perception of the bedside manner, how much the patient liked, and it's as soft as that, liked the physician, correlates. It's an inverse correlate. The more they liked them, the lower the percentage of lawsuits. And the exact opposite, regardless of the veracity of the suit or the merits, the more likely somebody was to sue, they had this tendency to dislike. So it's the same thing. We see a lot of accounting firms getting the same thing. Man, nobody is better at getting you money back on your taxes, but nobody wants to work with them. Nobody wants to lead them. Nobody wants to be their client. So, and it's not just about emotional intelligence. There's a whole slew of traits that somebody can look at to understand what are those intangible drivers based on your neural network, based on the way your mind is wired. And it changes over the course of your life slowly, glacially. But these are things that we started a company primarily focused on. How do we understand those things? And we do the studies to look at roles and say what correlates with the top performers. And that helps establish a benchmark. And that's whatever they're doing out there, whether they're using us or anybody else, having some way to understand what those pieces are beyond the CV, beyond the resume, is going to be so crucial to your success. And the first advice we always give clients and anybody who's hiring is start internally first. What do you need? You just talked about the Disney brothers. Do I need another Walt? Or what aspects of the company need to be filled? What tasks, duties, responsibilities, and who is going to best fit those, not just hard skills, but soft skills? And then how are they going to fit in the culture? You've got to do this internal self-assessment first before you know what you're looking for. And then you can go out and find it.
Yeah, and you hit on something that I want to go back and talk about in a moment, and that's the culture and ultimately like what are you trying to create as far as the temperature inside of your business. But I want to ask a more broad question, and that is, when I go to hire somebody, right? There's I can look at the individual hire. I have this need, and I'm going to try to find this person, or I could look at, hey, I'm building a team. And where does this person fit in the team? And how do I assemble the right players? And I hate sports analogies when it comes to building a business, but a perfect example is looking at a football team or something like that, where that I've got to, if I just get a good quarterback, right? They could be the best quarterback in the world, but if I don't have that front line of defense in front of him to make sure that he's not getting hit, he's not going to be able to perform as the best quarterback in the world, right? So we kind of need to look at the comprehensive thing that we're trying to create as we fill those spots, because they have to work well with each other. So how does somebody navigate that when they're, and not necessarily when they're doing their first hire? I mean, we can have conversations around that, but our listeners are broad. I want to keep this conversation around growing the team from wherever you are to where you need to be. How does somebody focus on the big picture of what they're trying to create, where everybody works together and everyone is happy, versus, oh, I have this one position to fill?
So, and I think it's a good question from a strategic standpoint. If your intent is to grow, and whatever growth means to you, whatever size means to you, right? So, is that going to be 2 people? Is it going to be a legal secretary, an administrative assistant, a receptionist? Is it going to be 500 people? Whatever that definition is for you, it's bringing with it complexity, and it's bringing with it one of the hardest things to navigate in business that they don't do a whole lot to teach about in many of the specialties where we work. In medicine and law, in accounting, you can get your master's in accountancy, and there maybe have been one semester on human capital management, if that, one class possibly. But thinking like a coach, and I think a sports analogy makes sense. Back to the intangible discussion, the hard skills, people go to the combines, they look at tapes from kids in college, and they go, hey, this person has the physical attributes that we need, the physical skills to pivot, to run. How fast is he? How skinny? How heavy? How high can he jump? How far can he throw? The intangibles oftentimes don't get considered nearly as much, but you see that what normally messes a team up is that incompatibility of those intangible things. You have a quarterback that is a franchise quarterback and has all of the physical attributes somebody needs, but they can't handle the pressure. They don't do well leading. They're not cohesive with the rest of the team. You see the same thing oftentimes. So taking that analogy and putting it into a sales example where, or engineering or law or wherever, where they're the best person there, period. And so because of seniority, this is the industrial approach, era approach. Because of seniority and knowledge and experience, you're now the manager.
Mm-hmm.
And in the sports analogy, have you ever seen maybe one that I can think of where the star athlete then makes the best coach?
Right.
Michael Jordan didn't. So many others didn't. Larry Bird actually did an okay job in the NBA becoming a head coach. But usually and people go, why? They know more about it. They're better at it. They can play better ball than anybody on this field. But management's not about playing better ball. It's about getting others to play better ball, which is a completely different skill set. So your question to strategically, how do I grow a team, has to start with understanding everybody's unique. I have to understand what's really driving 98% of the behavior I see. And that's not what they learned in a book. It's not what they learned at school. That's hard, tangible knowledge that's acquirable. Everything that knowledge sits on top of is not acquirable. You don't change a person's neural network. It changes, like I said, through life, but it's glacially dynamic. It's very slow, 5, 7, 10 years. I know I don't behave and think the way today that I did when I was 16, thank God, but I'm not going to go to a course that changes my behavioral perspective. It's not going to change the way I assess risk or don't, or the pace with which I'd like to do things, or how decisive or deliberate I am in making decisions or dealing with problems, or I'm not going to take a pill that makes me more extroverted or introverted. So one of the tips that we often give is people will try to find teammates that will get along with everybody. The problem with that, and that may, I think, sometimes just be a myth and is almost always a mistake, is you're placing the emphasis on the wrong thing. It's important to understand how well will they get along with everybody, but different tasks require, back to the analogy, let's just beat it to death. I will, but I like it. They have the ability to be a wide receiver, but I want somebody who is more central in their tendencies from a behavioral standpoint. So when I interview somebody, this is where non-structured interviews usually fall down. The greater the difference, the delta in my personality to yours, the more likely I don't like you as much in the interview. The closer you are to me behaviorally, the more I like you. But unless I'm hiring to do my job, then that has an adverse impact. I want to find somebody who's thinking very differently than I do, the exact opposite to me.
Right.
But then in the interviews, if I'm just kind of winging it and saying, do I like you or not? Many times I come out and I go, I don't know. There was something about that person where I'm just going to maybe not rate them as high because they were more pedantic than I would want them to be, or they asked too many questions, or they were, anal about this, or the opposite, they were just loosey goosey and all kind of talky. And so start with looking at your culture. Start with looking at the business need. That's the guideline I think everybody should use. What's the business requirements? What tasks, duties, responsibilities do we need somebody to fulfill? And then let's go find them. That can create potential interpersonal conflict, but that you can deal with. Education, team building, awareness building, those things help a leader understand those dynamics, and that can be mitigated. But getting everybody that gets along because they have similar personalities and expecting them to all day long do tasks and jobs that are not a great fit for them, you see the lack of engagement. Gallup polls since 19 or 20 years now, engagement's super low. You get burnout, you get lack of productivity, you get the kiss of death, which is the worst thing in the world, is somebody who quit but forgot to tell you.
Right.
Do exactly what you tell them to do and then stop.
Mm-hmm.
They're not passionate about what they do.
They're spending their time on Facebook and shopping online instead of being productive.
The 459ers, they're like kids in high school, it's like watching the clock. Is it done yet?
Waiting for the bell to ring.
Exactly. I'm out.
School's out. All right. So somebody who does not have, they don't have the HR background, they don't have the size or breadth to have an HR director on staff. That's the need that you're filling, right? how do they create this process to analyze the culture fit, you use the word culture. I know internally here, I've identified core values, and I give somebody a core values exercise to make sure that there's an alignment of at least 2 or 3 of the top 5 core values that we have. How does somebody map out this process and create a plan for how am I going to vet the candidate so that I am addressing the right things and I'm measuring the right things along the way, and I'm trusting the data that's coming out and not my own gut instinct about whether they're going to be the right person or the wrong person. And just to add some background to this question, you probably know this, but I know this for certain from anecdotally from the clients that I work with. People make the wrong hire all the time. And what ends up happening is you bring somebody in and then you spend a ton of time, energy, money, training them, getting them up to speed, but they're the wrong hire. So they're set up for failure. And at some point you're going to have to let them go, or they're going to have to quit, and you're going to have to go through it again. And we also hire too quickly. We make these decisions too quickly. We need to enter them more slowly. So how does somebody navigate this process so that they know, hey, I'm slowing it down, I'm doing all the right things, and when I finally bring this person on, they're hopefully going to be a lifer, or they're going to be here for a very long time doing the things that they love and in the place that they love doing it, and this perfect nirvana alignment of personnel that eliminates all of that extra impediment to growth and costliness of the wrong hire.
Great questions, a good string of them. So we can kind of go backwards. I'll avoid too many gratuitous plugs for what we do personally, and I think a lot of people can do it themselves without us. But
you can plug yourself along the way as much as you want. I don't have a problem with that at all. But as long as we understand the fundamental concept behind it is really where we need to just be clear.
And I think it starts with understanding what constitutes a bad hire. And so we're fleshing out another way of talking about something that we've already kind of discussed, which is if it's rote memorization of materials, gaining of knowledge, acquiring of knowledge and hard skills, then nobody should fail, right? Obviously, not Pollyannish. If you aren't trying, or you're not getting good training or something, but if it's about acquiring things that can be added to you, then the success rate should be much higher, right? Because I can learn the skills of whatever the job is. I can become a proficient expert in the law, right? And the technology that I need to use, but that's not the case. And we see a high percentage of failures of job matches and success. And I would argue confidently that's because the majority of what's driving success, ergo the failure of it, the good match, is not looking and not having visibility, not surfacing all of the intangibles. And so some of it can be quantitative, some of it can be qualitative. And so the way you interview is a key, a core structured interview process with numerous individuals designed to look from different angles. If a candidate's in the center of a valley with 4 mountain peaks around it, you'd like 3 or 4 people to be standing on it, because you're going to get a much more comprehensive 360-degree view of that individual. We fool ourselves if we say, I can do this from a singular angle. Your personality, the way you think, what you think, how you view it, your biases, your judgments, that's going to skew your opinion about this individual. So having a multitude of people hiring and involved always helps. Having a systemized process, which allows you to ask the same questions of everybody. So you have a benchmark of how did they ask it versus this. Surfacing those intangibles. There are hundreds of personality assessments out there. We're way more than just personalities at WizeHire. There's good ones out there. If you're using us, great. We've already built them into the system. Use them to help, again, surface information about the individual that you then incorporate into your decision making. No assessment, no system, no tool, no process should make the decision for you, but they should be used to inform you to make a better decision. And the reason why a lot of decisions fail or hires fail is because both sides are uninformed. This isn't just on you, the person, the managing partner who's thinking about hiring. It's on the person sitting across from you with their resume in their hand, hoping to get hired. They too have a lack of awareness and visibility into what is it that really is going to be a good fit for me. It tends to be soft and kind of, well, there's great reputation, prestige, looks like this. I liked them in the interview. Most job seekers, they have no structured interview process. They don't come in with, hey, let me ask you these 12 questions. And what about this? And can you let my friend talk to you? They're stuck in one vein only. So you have two lesser informed parties making a decision. If you can surface information that gives both of them, some of it quantitative, right? Here's an assessment, a validated, studied, personality assessment that surfaces all kinds of traits with regards to how you like to work, what motivations you have that are going to be answered in this job, and what cultural fits you have. And the other side of the fence has the same thing. And then back to the very beginning of your discussion, in starting that assessment, some of it's qualitative. Just sit back and ask, like you're talking about. Work with you on what are those core characteristics and values. We have 7 core values, 9 core values that we look at that help define our culture, and you can do that just by just asking the question. It really isn't that complicated. It's just, what is it that really drives us? And we want to make sure and write that down. Let's codify that in our minds as a team and see what it is that we really are looking for and we want to match with. And those things are going to be important in this individual as well. And we can just simply ask questions about that in the interview, non-guided questions of, hey, what are some of the most important values for you when it comes to work and life? And how would you want us to be able to help work with you on those? And the quantitative part is, we offer a team assessment of everybody when they sign up with WizeHire. We give those same personality assessments that measure cultural drivers, motivation, behavioral traits, why and how somebody wants to do things. We give it to everybody on the team, and we create a visual mapping of it. And we walk through that with the leadership and say, here's your culture, here's your team, here's who you have now. And then we'll discuss from a task and a duty standpoint, where is that person going to fit in? And it all is around chasing authenticity. There's a lot of other aspects. Just the pure ability to write a good job description that is search engine optimized, has the right keywords, getting it posted out to 100 plus job boards. All of this is automated in the system and it takes care of it for you. But then having that benchmark that we've studied to say, what do the other top performers, so we can be informed, we can learn from real life. What are others? Are there correlations? Are there trends that we see that others who love this job and knock it out of the park have, that we can use for a litmus test for you to be able to measure other candidates against? And we do that measuring for you. The system automatically gives those assessments to every candidate and then ranks them into one of 4 bands from an excellent fit to poor, and gives you that information. And then you, of course, make that decision on your own. But with or without us, stop and think, what is it you want first? Look at your team, get their input, and then use that information as you go out. Try to surface that in the candidates in a multitude of ways, and then add that into the mix of what it is that you're deciding on. Not simply just a CV and I liked them, great referral. Like you're going to give somebody's, the thing about resumes and CVs is it's a brochure from Ford, right? They're going to what? Tell you that here's the problem with our transmission? No. Can you give me a couple of happy Ford customers? Yeah, sure. They're going to give you the phone number for the guy that switched to Chevy because Ford fell apart. You're not going to get great referrals in a resume or an interview. They're not going to give you the boss that hated them. They're going to give you their sorority sisters and fraternity brothers who love them.
Yeah, I interestingly enough, here internally, and maybe this is not the best practice, but we don't ask for a resume and we don't look at a resume. I am not interested in knowing what you're going to put on that paper. I'm more interested in knowing who you are as an individual, and whether or not you are passionate about what we do and passionate about our mission and excited to come on board here. And do you have, if there are strategic, specific, like you call the hard skills that are required, then we're going to ask about those. But if not, everything else can be taught. Like it's finding the right individual with the right temperament and the right ability to rise to the occasion for whatever the job is, I feel is way more important than what were your successes before? What was your past? And then that'll come up in conversation anyway. So, I kind of try not to taint the picture and look at, something that they've put together on a piece of paper. You had mentioned something earlier that really got my attention, and that is the fact that the person who is interviewing for the job, the candidate, they don't have a structured process. They probably don't even know what they want. And when they're on the other side of the table, because they don't have access to that, because they're uninformed, is it our job as the employer who's hiring to help teach them that in some way in that process? And how do we position ourselves so that we are giving them the information that they need to be able to figure out, is this the company for me? It's so hard for somebody who's sitting there to receive a job offer and say, no, I'm not going to take it because I don't think that my core values align with yours.
It is tough.
So,
it is tough. Yeah.
So how do you set them up for success in that way where they're not making the wrong decision on the other side of the table?
It's hard. I mean, there's things that we can try to do to get that power and information and control into the job seeker's hand. There's a lot of constraints as the hiring company. From a legality standpoint, nobody in the U.S. would normally share notes or comments or decisions from their end as to why they did or didn't hire somebody. And I get it, and I support it. I think the best you can do is to say, look, here's what we see, and here's what we see in you, and I'm not sure why this is going to be a good fit or not. But we would never see a manager, hiring manager, or company share a personality assessment that says this, or definitely not notes that are in a resume. So you're limited, and unfortunately, in our litigious world, which is good for a lot of the people listening here, but it usually means that those dictates that come out of any thought leader are keep that close to the vest. Just don't share it. Say, look, it's just not the right fit for us. And I'm not sure it's their responsibility. I think it's a good thought to want to help them with that, but the liabilities that you open up in doing so probably justify not. So, if a hiring manager says to me, how do I help them get a better place? That's altruistic and wonderful. But I would say back to them, you can give them some ideas as to where you see them different from you, but you're probably talking to somebody, and this is just universally anybody in that seat, who really may not have but about a 40 or 50% clarity as to what exactly their culture and value fit and intangible traits are, unfortunately. In that 197,000 person study I was citing, the average on a 0 to 10 scale, the average self-awareness was a 5.5. So it's cool that we would want to do that, but I think the best thing we can do is to not hire somebody who we think, for all of the factors that we see, isn't a great fit, because that's going to be the best service to them.
Jay,
so sure.
I appreciate your response, and it really did answer part of my question. However, I am approaching it from the other side of the question, and I want you to touch on this for a moment in the way that you responded just now. I am coming from the place of not, hey, this person may not be the right fit, I'm rejecting them. How do I help them? I am asking, I have somebody on the other side of the table who checks all the boxes for me. I see that they are a right fit. As from my perspective, is there a way for me to give them some sort of process or education or something that they need so that they can come from an informed place to say, yes, I want this job, or no, this is not for me. And it's not just, hey, you went through our process, we validated you, we're going to offer you this position. Do you want it or not?
Oh, well, in that case, yeah, sorry. So, I mean, there I would definitely say, what is it that you see? Probably more on the pro side than the con side. If you're looking to say no to somebody, then yes, the majority of it is because the cons outweigh the pros. So you talk a little bit about the pros, it's going to be the minority of the discussion. If it's somebody who you want to make an offer to, the pros should be far outweighing the cons. So if you continue to focus on sharing the pros, right, because it's the cons that'll get the lawsuits filed, it's the cons that'll get people in trouble. If you're always focusing on the pros, then do the same thing. Hey, here's why I think you're a good fit. We're culturally about this. These are some of our core values. In this interview process, we believe you connected with those. We truly, sincerely think that you share the same values. That's important to us. In your resume, in your CV, yes, you do have the hard skills and the natural talents. And depending on the office and the firm, that might be much more important to some. Some aren't ready. You have to, obviously, if you're hiring an attorney, have a bar certified attorney. They have to have gone to law school. They've got a JD, or legal secretary or something. Some of those things for the smaller offices are more important because they can't. And the analogy we've seen there is a house. Somebody who doesn't have tons of funds, wants to buy a house, they need one that's pretty much good to go, hit the ground, move in ready, as they say. But somebody who has more ability and is interested in training and teaching and onboarding, well, they're looking for a house that's okay on fixing up. To them, it's not a big deal that they're going to have to knock out the kitchen and push out a back wall and add an addition and redo all the floors and the walls and the paint. So it really depends on where you are. I don't think either's right or wrong. But when you get that person, now you've moved into sales mode and you want to convince them, I would share all the pros all the way down from the intangibles to the tangibles. The tangibles aren't going to surprise them. They put it in their resume. Here's the things I'm great at. What they won't be used to hearing is you say, here's why we want to make you an offer. And you're talking about all these things about cultural alignment, how you can talk about the assessments. They took them. They know they went through the assessments. If you're talking to the pros, you still get that mitigation, but you're talking about, here's what I saw in that assessment. People don't get litigious about being told that they've got natural talents that make them a great fit for a job. They just don't. So that's usually unique. It's novel. People aren't used to having, hiring managers say, you know what, your level of decisiveness, the degree with which you're great with specificity and accuracy and attention to detail, your work ethic, you're like, huh? But it also, in doing so, I think subconsciously tells them, wow, they're looking at me as a person. And if that's the takeaway I would leave you with, that would be it. They see me as an individual. Another office might be saying, or firm might be saying, we think you've got the best education and, we want you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, people are going to resonate a lot more by being appreciated for more of who they are than just what's on paper.
Right.
It usually has a very big impact.
Right. Now, you mentioned assessments throughout our conversation, and obviously assessments are play an integral role in the hiring process from your perspective. And I would not disagree with you. I think that there's a certain amount of a certain quantifiable piece of information that we don't have access to without formalizing it, and through a assessment that we provide the same one to every single candidate, so we can get that feedback. There's a lot of assessments out there, and there's a lot of reasons why each of them is a great assessment. How does somebody go about navigating which are the right assessments to use for their hiring process, or conversely, how did you decide what to implement into your tool, into your software, as, hey, these are the assessments that we're doing, and this is why?
That is a great question. Again, there's thousands and thousands of different personality assessments out there, and they range, like anything, they range from very low quality fun things to do on Facebook, then they'll call it an assessment. What color are you? To very high end, purely clinical assessments or instruments. It's tough. The bigger companies have industrial organizational psychologists. They have a PhD. They have terminal degrees in understanding what's the right answer to your question. So for the small companies, that was something that we wanted to bring to them to help them hire like a pro. So the easy answer is use us, because we already did all that for you. The material answer is, if you're going to use any assessment, look for what's called a technical manual that's going to contain validity and reliability studies. You may not need to understand what's in it. You just need to ask them, because a good company will give them to you. Mm-hmm. Okay. It's pretty binary too. We don't share those. We don't have them. Okay. Fail. All right. If they're not willing to give it to you, then they probably don't have them, or it doesn't speak well of them. And these are very empirical, very rigorous studies that understand, construct validity, concurrent validity, face validity, criterion validity. There's a whole slew of things you can unpack to go, what is it that really says this is good or not? Is it reliable? And is it valid? Two totally separate, distinctions there. There's a third when you start using it in hiring, that is there an adverse impact? There's a 4/5 rule that says you have to do studies that understand that this psychometric instrument does not, have any kind of biases towards any protected class. They have to be done. And so if you ask any company, can I have your validity and reliability studies? And can I have your adverse impact studies? If the answer is no, don't use them. There's Myers-Briggs, one of the more famous ones out there. Don't use for corporate use. And the family can, send me a letter. I'll give you my email address. They can send it over. It's not doing anything libelous. It's been around for hundreds of years. It's very good at understanding a person's perceptions and preferences in a certain thing. And I could be wrong, but I have yet to see rigorous validity and reliability studies that at an organizational level and adverse studies in a hiring capacity have been done. Strengths Finders from Clifton took a big marketing push, and they're fantastic at marketing it. And, Marcus Buckingham's original study, First Break All the Rules, phenomenal research and great stuff. I don't know that Strengths Finders has that same level of rigor. You go the opposite in the direction. There's companies that have used a thing called an MMPI, a Minnesota multiphasic instrument, which was really created for measuring psychoses. Should never be used in business. And unless you have a clinical psychologist who's interpreting the results, you're going to join the slew of companies that have lost lawsuits because they used a clinical instrument when they shouldn't. So as you can see, the answer is kind of scary. The best answer I can give is work with a company that has done this and they know what they're doing. And otherwise you have to become an expert in it yourself. But if you do find one out there on the internet and you want to use it, ask for those three things. Can I see the validity, reliability, and adverse impact studies?
Yeah, and I feel like we probably need to get you back on the show to have a whole conversation just around personality assessments, because oh my gosh, my head is spinning, and I'm sure that our listeners too. Obviously, there's a lot of choice in the industry, and you kind of need guidance. You don't want to have, it's one of those things where like, okay, I don't want to buy a car because it's going to take so much time for me to go through and read all the different reviews and consumer reports and, trying to analyze and figure out which is the car that I'm going to buy. So I'm just going to push off that purchase because I don't want to have to deal with, making that decision. So it's kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to hire my next person because I'm stuck in this. There's so many personality tests out there and I don't know which is the right one to use. Let's take a moment because we're just about out of time. So I want to just spend a couple of minutes talking about what WizeHire does. Not, and I'm not afraid for you to pitch your product here. I think that you're giving us your time, you're giving us valuable information. I think that you are perfectly capable of doing that, and I don't have a problem with it. But rather than a sales pitch, you're filling a need in the marketplace. You've made it very clear that this is a complex process to bring somebody on, and you're helping solve that process. So give me the broad strokes of what it's like to use WizeHire in this process and how easy it is for a business owner to get all of these checks, all these boxes checked, in that process by implementing, by using your platform.
And we'll meet in the middle. I'll do a non-pitchy sales pitch, talking about the 4 value propositions that we'll address. And so whether you use us or not, I think you can go to seek to fill these on your own. So we talk about starting, sourcing, screening, and supporting. And we fill this gap between the big job boards and the holes where we don't have a high, concentration of HR people working in a role or specialists or IO psychs, like I said. So starting with the right raw materials, the job description. And especially in law as well as in accounting, the job descriptions tend to be these cold, sort of emotionally sterile bullet lists, like a government request for proposal or something, where it's just bullet lists and blah. And unfortunately, people don't realize that you have to be thinking like a marketer when you start writing this job description. Okay? It's a pitch. And you asked the question, how do I convince this person that we like them to accept our offer? Because if they're great talent, I don't care what job, world, industry, or doesn't matter. If they're the best talent for your job, you're not the only one that's looking at them. You better be fighting for them, and you know that. So to begin with, you have to start with a job description that is SEO optimized, right? You've got to look and understand what are the words that are going to get in front of this person. We also do a personality optimization. What are the phrases that I use if I'm looking for an operations administrative person? I need to use words that talk about the systemic nature of our business and the structure and the systems and the security and the family orientation. If I'm looking for a much more aggressive leader or a trial attorney or somebody who's going to be in charge of, growth and expansion or something, then I need totally different sets of words because that will alienate them. So before you ever even knew who they were, when they saw it out there, they're going to go next. All right. So it starts with that, understanding what really constitutes a good pitch, if you will. Sourcing, you really just need to cast as wide a net as possible. And this varies depending on the job, but getting the widest net will always work. So through your network and sphere of influence, through over 100 different job boards, through social media, making as many people aware that you're looking as possible is a good thing. That creates, however, the problem where you now may have too many to look at. And so the third piece of that is screening. So how do we screen people through progressively finer filters that start with very little of your time? Because that's another, side piece is we want to protect the hire manager's time. And the deeper they go, the more your involvement, is. And so that's just processes of going through different application pieces, taking the assessment, which on average takes about 13 to 15 minutes. But there are people that will refuse to do that, and we'll invite them to take it 5 times before they ever show up on your dashboard. Having an applicant tracking system that takes them through phases. So in the beginning, they've applied. What do I see in the CV or resume? Does that get them to the next level? Maybe even a simple phone screen can be very telling. Did they reply back to you on time? Did they show up when you asked them to on the phone and called them? Those can be big checks or marks. And then it gets down to looking at the personality and comparing them to the benchmark of people that we've studied by the thousands in that role and say, what does that do? So surfacing that information to help you make a decision. And we help guide you. We'll give our opinion. It's just one, but it's an opinion that says we think they're more of an excellent fit than a poor fit or very good or average. And then support. We have a fleet of human, phenomenal, real people, our hiring coaches. And because this is software, it's as a service. And so the service piece is where that support shows up. You need real humans that know your name and you'll know theirs and be able to call them or chat with them or email them and say, what do I do about this? Or asking opinions about that, or getting somebody to give a debrief for your entire team. And we'll spend an hour going over all of the culture and the personalities of your existing team, because a lot of the big software companies like Indeed, you can post a job up there. They're fantastic, right? They're the Google of jobs. They're amazing, billion-dollar company. But if you're small enough, you're below 500 employees or 250 employees, probably at least 100. They don't know how to deal with you. It's like a cable company. I mean, I'm not trying to say bad things about them, but they're better suited to deal with people that have that talent and understand pay-per-clicks and understand conversion rates and how to take people through. And so that support thing, whatever you're doing, is important to have somebody that you can turn to and pick up the phone and call quickly and ask those questions of as well. So that's the value propositions that we're looking for. And I think if you're doing it on your own or with us, try to fit those same things. Think about where you start from. What's your current culture? What's your current needs? Where are you? And then start with a good message that's designed to find the optimal fit for that. Spread it and cast it out there and wide as possible. And then start filtering down in a systematized kind of approach that helps you get down to the last few. informing you, surfacing that information we've talked about in this whole call, not just the hard stuff, but the soft stuff. And hopefully you can find somebody that will support you and answer those questions that will help you do it as well.
So if somebody wants to use WizeHire, what is the fee for them to get involved? What is the investment in using your software? And does that include access to this hiring coach that you're describing?
Yeah, we're SaaS, right? Software as a service. So like Benioff did when he left Oracle and started Salesforce, it's this wacky kind of weird upside down world. It's a flat monthly rate of $199 a month, and there's no contract. So you use it when you need it, you turn it off when you don't. Your access to the dashboard maintains nonstop. So the $199 is the sourcing of candidates to fill that funnel. And a lot of people will run that for a month or two. They'll find the individual and then they pause their account. So they don't pay anything the next month, but they still log in and work them through the funnel. All of the applicants are still there. They walk them through the applicant tracking system, the staged way of taking people from applied to which one do I want to slide over to the hired box. And the support's there. That's unlimited and included. They're live from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern time. So there's people that'll be in there to help and support you. And that's it. It's that SaaS model takes something that normally would be very expensive and still delivers a high quality result, high quality talent, saves you time so you do it faster. And SaaS allows us to do it in a way that saves you money as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a dream come true. So I can't imagine why somebody who is in the hiring mode wouldn't want to take a look and take it for a spin and see how it plays out for them. I mean, just the cost of paying for your own assessments for your candidates, paying for listing the job in the various job posting sites, all those things cost money, and if you just that you've got all of that included and bundled in here, makes it really easy and simple. We're going to close out. We
tell our clients too that the $199 seems like too good a deal. We're always glad to let them pay us more.
Okay, awesome.
If it ever makes anybody nervous, we'll
you have the box. Like, how much extra do you want to pay?
Yeah, I don't want somebody to be uncomfortable.
Right.
We'll double it. No, but that's the leveraging of technology that software as a service allows. Unlimited candidates, unlimited jobs. That's unlimited jobs, unlimited candidates, and unlimited personality assessments. But that's the beauty of today's tech. And I think it's where I used to have to go to Blockbuster, right? I'm old enough where I'd go to Blockbuster with the kids and rent the VHS tapes. I remember Betamax and, look at Netflix. It's the same quality movie. Right. It's not like, and you went through this. You remember the stage where you could get pirated. You'd hear your friend got a pirated copy of an album or a movie or something. Horrible quality, but you weren't paying anything for it. Netflix, Prime, Amazon Prime, Peacock. It's the exact same movie at the exact same high quality, but I can watch, as many have during this pandemic, binge watch the entirety of the show, and it still only costs me $10 a month through Netflix.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love it. All right, we're gonna close out the show. I want to ask you two things. Number one, can you share one parting piece of advice, wisdom, something that you want to share with our audience as your lasting impression with them? And number two, how do they find out more about you, about WizeHire? If they want to consider taking the next step, where do they go? Just give us a call to action there for somebody who's interested.
So I don't know why, I just realized I tend to always go backwards. If you want to learn more about us, just go to WizeHire.com. That's WizeHire.com. www.WizeHire, though we're not smart enough to spell it correctly, .com. Okay. Feel free to give them my email. You can share that however you want. I'm glad to take any questions, and we can, we offer free team debriefs to people that are listening if they want to bring them over. The parting business advice I would give to somebody that's hiring, it would really be look way beyond the CV. 99% of what's going, and you said it, so I'm just going to parrot that. 99% of what's going to make you successful, has made you successful, and is going to make anybody you bring into the organization successful, has nothing to do with what you see on paper. So, there's an old quote that says, I don't know what the answer is, but as long as I'm asking the question, I'm okay. And maybe that's the parting wisdom, because more often than not, unfortunately, people don't ask that question. What are the intangibles that really make this person who they are, and how do we leverage those to success, right? On this team and in this job as an individual contributor. So Ask the question, the answer you'll find, and it'll be different for every person in every situation, but just make sure you ask the question.
Awesome. Love it. Jay, thank you so much for bringing such immense knowledge to the show. I am sure that we're going to have a follow-up conversation around this. Really, really excited to share this with our audience. And folks, if you just listen to this episode and your mind is blown and you're like, wow, this is just amazing. What we need you to do is just take a moment and just go and rate and review the show. In your podcast player, they all have an ability to rate or review the show. Give us a number of stars. I don't care how many, however many you feel we deserve, but rate and review. Write a little description, even if it's, hey, I hate this podcast. I don't think anybody should listen to this. I don't think you're going to do that, but whatever it is, because the more the higher the quantity of reviews that we get, the more likely the people who check us out say, hey, I'm going to give it a try. Let me listen to this show. So we need more ratings and reviews the same way that you need it when somebody's searching for a lawyer and they go out and they're looking for a lawyer and you've got 20 Google reviews and somebody right behind you's got 100. Who are they checking out? They're going to the 100 reviews. So we need your ratings and reviews. And if you haven't yet hit that subscribe button, make sure to do so that when we drop the next episode. We do it every Tuesday and Thursday. We're here in your ears twice a week and bringing you amazing guests just like Jay. Thank you so much. Keep it real. We'll see you on Tuesday. Jay, thank you so much.
Thanks. I appreciate it. See y'all.
Have you been enjoying the show? We sure hope so. To make sure you never miss an episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button in your podcast player app. Next week, we will be back with more valuable resources and ideas on how to break the mold and take your law firm to the next level.